Seco Consulting.
Kelly Gray Jackson.
Alden Thurn, Deputy CFO.
And the young lady back there.
I'm Lisa Slisner, Deputy Municipal Clerk.
Okay, thank you. All right, Alden, you have the floor.
Great. Well, I wanted to, this meeting, I appreciate you, Elsie, for moving it since I'm going to be halfway across the Atlantic at this time tomorrow, I hope, to go over some of the some updates, but more importantly, always answer questions. I think this is a great opportunity to kind of get those things out there. The two key areas I wanted to talk about was one, an assembly memo that's coming forward, should be on the next assembly, I think it's the 22nd, next Tuesday, I think it is for Alaska IT Group, and those are a group of consultants. I mean, we're attempting to use more and more Alaska consulting resources as much as possible. One, the hourly rate is lower, and two, we don't have to worry about transportation and travel and all those kind of things, which are pretty substantial. I believe the Assembly initially did this one. It's been a while. I'd probably say at least maybe around a year ago, and I think the allocation was $500,000 for their consulting services. And we use them predominantly to go through and do a time management study, or the contractual items when we're looking for pay purposes. Try to go through what should have been done with Kronos ahead of time, go through, look at what the contracts are, what's our practice, and those kind of things. So the vast majority of that money was spent doing that particular project, or springtime through the summer, and that's what was also continued during the pause, was that particular project. We're just trying to finish up a few little components of that right now, but we've kind of switched because their resources are so valuable, because they had all the discussions with the users and the payroll and all. They went all to the departments, everything.
We're still talking about Alaska IT.
That's correct. This is all Alaska IT. We wanted to keep them on. So the $500,000 that was originally allocated is pretty much up, but we want to keep them on as a resource because of the time management discussion that we'll talk about here. They have some benefit. In addition to that, they actually have a very broad skill set in a variety of other areas, such as SharePoint creation, which we're using them. So as a result, what this memo is going to come forward is it's going to go from $500,000 allocation out to $850,000. So we're adding $350,000, and we're extending it through March 31st.
So can we ask questions while you...
Always.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. So they already had a $500,000 contract,
correct.
and so what's coming before us is a contract amendment to add another $350,000.
That is correct, for a total of $850,000. And we moved, we extended the date from, I think it's December through the end of March, so they are able to use that.
So is that going to be on the agenda? Because I didn't see it on the preliminary agenda.
It wasn't supposed to. Abbott sent me a text saying that made it through PACE, so I'm assuming...
Well, maybe I just missed it. I'll look again.
Okay, so if you could look at that. He wanted me to speak to it at this group so that I was here and he could ask questions in advance of Monday, but it was supposed to make it on this coming one. I got a text saying it did.
Okay, I'll just look at it. And it actually doesn't matter. If it's coming, it's either going to be on the agenda or on the agenda. So.
Okay, and what we've also done is we went through all of the other ones that were encumbered with a variety of different vendors, and if we no longer felt that we were going to be needing those services, we've unencumbered them. So we're kind of like taking money from the ones we're not using, and then we're the group we are using, but we have to go through the process to be able to do that.
Right, so are you keeping REI?
RDI?
RDI, sorry.
We are disencumbering RDI.
Okay, good.
We also did a one called Parish Blessing, and we've done a few others, smaller ones that have been out there for a while. But
so you're just encumbering a few smaller contracts?
Yeah, we have. I'd say there's probably 4 to 6 different vendors where we felt that we no longer were going to be needing them. The one we decided to keep, we kept whatever was left on the Gardner one in case we needed to do something.
And how much money are we talking about?
I think all said and done, when we get done, it's going to be approximately $350,000. It's almost a wash between the two.
Okay.
But RDI was about $250,000. Parish Blessing was $33,000.
So it'll be a wash. So it won't be any additional money.
We're not increasing the 49.2. We're just increasing how the money was allocated.
You know what I think is really important, and I haven't seen the AM. Okay, but I think it's important to make that point clear. Probably in the AM, if it's not too late. Maybe whoever wrote it did make that point clear. Because I think that knowing my colleagues, they're going to see 350 and think it's lot of them, not to be dogging them, but a lot of them don't even read stuff, you know, so I think it's gonna be important to.
To be honest, I didn't see the AM when it was.
Yeah,
so
and I'll look at
You
it,
could look at
you
it,
know,
but I want to be able to answer the question, but we did that as a separate thing, just as good practice to be
yeah,
able to go
because,
through.
you
that
know,
and do that.
nobody's here for Pete and I, and usually, you know, folks aren't here, but they always have a lot of questions.
What
you know,
we
which could have
really-
been answered.
What we
but,
really
you know,
kind of got down to on our consultants now are SAP, Peloton, and Alaska IT. Those are kind of the three core that were.
So say that again, you kept
SAP,
Peloton,
Peloton, and Alaska IT are kind of, that's where all of our consultants are coming from.
Okay. And so do you think that there are gonna be any additional ones
Any
throughout the
additional
project?
vendors? Actually, at this point, I don't think so. I think I think we're pretty well there, for where we're at. I think that's where we're gonna keep focusing on those groups. That's why we got rid of all the other ones that we possibly could. So I wanted to speak on that and to answer any questions you may have, so you're prepared for it on Tuesday when it comes. We probably plan on keeping them even farther because with a variety of different projects, but when we bring forward, or when the administration brings forward whatever the realization to go live proposal is, we want this company to have this much, and we'll look at Alaska IT as a separate group of that, of what we think for the rest of the time period. But we kind of put it through blueprinting and then a little extra just so we knew that we had enough.
Who's the CEO for Alaska IT? Drew?
I do not know the answer to that question.
I was just curious.
They're a local group that's got a pretty diverse resource base. So if we needed somebody in security or basis, and we just brought one on for SharePoint, which is going to be our communication tool to the Muni employees. We're going to put the entire project out there and all the training. And this particular person is developing it from scratch because we have no internal resources available to it, and that's one reason we want. But if we need a specific targeted area where we don't have any experience, we're able to pull from them. And since they're local and their rates are less, we're going to try to build that relationship up as much.
That's great. I never heard of them. They put it in to respond to an RFP, or they were...
They had to, because that's how the original, but that original one was for just the time functions that we're doing when that one was put forward for the $500,000. And now we're kind of using that resource because they're sitting with the consultants who are blueprinting, which we will dovetail into this. As you're aware, the administration made a decision on time management. That's been the one thing that nobody wanted to ever tackle in the last 4 years, and we're eliminating Kronos, and we're moving all the time management and time processes into SAP. So by keeping these Alaska IT group people on there with all the background, they're going to be able to speed up the process with our consultants as we're going through
This
that
is the
process.
first time that I've ever heard mentioned throughout this whole process, not just when the new administration took over, but throughout. I've never heard of Alaska IT Group. And obviously, they simply approved the contract, but I must have overlooked it when it happened. Because I've always heard Peloton and SAP.
And Oxford, you probably heard of as well as another.
Yeah, but not.
And we're getting out of the
That's
Oxford
okay,
business effective tomorrow.
So, I know that Kronos is being eliminated, but what's the time frame? Because I heard that it's going to be like another year.
So when the ERP system goes online, that's when Kronos would end at that
So
point.
when SAP goes live, that's when Kronos will be
That's
done.
correct. And right now we're shooting for July of 2017
Still.
because we're going to be incorporating all the time evaluation within SAP and its CAT system. And we had to have that decision because we need a blueprint on. None of that work was done to be able to do that. So the decision was made on 3 different areas: time swiping, time collection, and time evaluation. We just talked about evaluation and that SAP is going to have everything in there. Time swiping centered around who's going to be required to punch in and out on a daily basis. And the process or the decision was made that all overtime eligible employees at some point will be required to punch in and out just because of FLSA and good practice and all those kind of things. So that's the direction that we're going. But it doesn't all have to happen on July 1st of 2017.
Right.
So the goal is to have the 2 utilities ready to go and police and fire only when ready. And those could be that date or pushed off based upon whether we're ready with the system and what the political climate is to look at those two particular groups.
Okay, welcome, Robert. If you like, you can feel free to join us. Yeah.
Oh, no, I like it. Viva's much better over here.
Okay.
So that's that
Thank you.
particular piece.
You're welcome.
And then the second piece was on time collection, because we have to be able to collect those punches. And currently Kronos is collecting those for part, and WorkTech time for another group, and another different version of Kronos. So with SAP doing everything, they will handle all the electronic means. So if there's a web clock, like if you go clock in on your computer, that'll be done through SAP. They'll also make sure that the IVR and the cell phones and iPads and all that will be routed that way. However, they don't have clocks. So they have a vendor that they, or another outfit that they use called Kava. So you hear that one. And they have a built-in plug-on with their system, so that we'll be actually negotiating a contract with them to purchase clocks from them, and also use their plug-in to be able to filter the actual punches that people use the clocks for. So that's an entity of how we'll be getting that.
Right, I just wanted to make a quick comment, okay, because I talked about the fact that you're getting disencumbering a few vendors, and then you're going to ask us to increase the contract by $350,000. But just FYI, and I just thought of it, I'm going to be giving a committee report live at the facility meeting on Tuesday, so I'll make it a point to mention that during my committee report.
Perfect.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know that that's what I'm.
So between the SAP time collection and the Kava one, then we'll handle all the variety of ways that people can collect time, and that'll filter into, as I mentioned, the SAP system, where all time evaluation will be done there. And that's where it matches up those punches with the business rules that every bargaining unit has. It determines what they're going to be paid, and then that information is funneled into payroll, and that's what creates the checks and goes out. So that was the time decision. We met with the directors, we met with the union leads, and as you know, we attempted to make phone calls to all the assembly and make them aware of that. The mayor communicated that out there. And as you brought up, there'll be no change to the existing way of doing business until the SAP system goes live. So every system that they're currently using will be in place. The last little piece here is there's teledriver and telestaff. Those are the scheduling things that are used by People Mover and the police and fire to do all their scheduling. Those are some very complex schedules and have some very complex rules. Those systems will keep in place, and they will build interfaces between those systems and SAP to allow that functionality to the groups.
Quick question, okay? So SAP, timekeeping through SAP is not going to go live until, well, let me back up. Kronos is going away when SAP goes live.
That's correct.
So in the meantime, are there going to be getting more costs related to Kronos between now and then?
That would be, not from the SAP perspective, that would have to come from the IT department on anything that they're doing. I have no plans at all with anything we're doing to do any additional costs.
Okay, so Robert, since IT reports to you,
Yes.
are there going to be any additional Kronos costs between now and when SAP goes live that you speak of right now?
Well, one of the things we're doing is we're doing a security upgrade from the current revision we have, the current edition we have now. We have to do a security upgrade to address the reliance on Java that the current version uses. So we're going to do a security upgrade.
So a Kronos security upgrade.
Yeah, so we're paying. So the answer to your question about cost is no. We pay for it as part of our maintenance agreement.
Okay.
So we're rolling it in. There will probably be some additional costs we could attribute to give how to get trained, how things can look. It's going to have a different look and feel because it's no longer using that Java-based system that the current edition uses. It could be that it's much more intuitive and user-friendly than the current version we have, and although that's probably a given under these circumstances, I'm not trying to bash Kronos. So I
You don't have to, everybody else has.
Okay, good. Then they've already done it for me, and I'll just leave
Yeah.
that. I'll leave that alone. But I think to answer your question is no. Dollar-wise, we're already paying for a maintenance agreement that upgrades Kronos. We just simply implements the.
Okay, so there's not going to be any more money spent on Kronos?
I don't believe so.
Okay, as of today.
As of my awareness, as of today. But I
Okay.
will, with your permission, Madam Chair, I will go just make sure. I'll ask my IT people and just make sure that we don't expect additional
I
costs.
would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
So that's where the time management, so you can see it's multiple parts. It's who's gonna clock, how we're gonna get them to clock, and where the system's gonna be implemented. So it's a pretty complex white paper with a whole lot of details that went along with that, but that was very important because that was the one piece where we had done zero work. That was never in the scope to, when we were going through the SAP or the ERP system. We were always going to keep Kronos and use interfaces between Kronos and SAP to be able to do that. So when they were configuring the system in the past, that nothing had been done. So we needed that decision to be made so that we have time to put that into blueprinting, which is still going to be tight to begin with, to still meet our March 1st deadline to try to match up with when we can start configuring the system with those particular rules. So pretty important decision, multifaceted, has some cost. We've introduced this Kava thing that'll be there. The question I always get is what's going to happen with the Kronos clocks that we currently have. I don't know. Maybe we'll sell them back. Some of them might be broken between that. I mean, you got a year and a half. There could be deficiencies on that. I don't know. I know we spent money on those to begin with, but they will not be used or needed once the system goes live, and we'll have to figure out something to do with the current existing hardware. The amount of money that's been spent on there won't be fully depreciated until I think 2021. So it's going to be a while as we go out. I believe the number is about $870,000 in capital was spent for Kronos from day one.
And I saw a number of 1.7 million.
We've had operating costs as well.
So that's operating and
I'll
capital.
bet that's a combination, because I've
Okay.
seen a number that's about the same for both of those. If you add those together, that's about right.
Gotcha.
So that's basically the time management, and then the Alaska IT and how we're using them to be able to filter on going forward. Just a kind of an update on everything else. I keep saying we're fully staffed. However, on a weekly basis, we're losing 1, 2, 3 consultants who just don't want to be in Alaska in December.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about this because I read Zig's weekly report yesterday and that was included in it.
It's-
Yeah. So what folks are just leaving?
We've had a variety of different things. We had 1 or 2 who lied on their apps, so we asked them to leave. We had 1 or 2 that got up here and they thought that they could be on site 1 week and off site 2 weeks, and that's not. I mean, we need people to be here during blueprinting. It's we're trying to focus on Northwest and West Coast people because of travel, but we've got current consultants that were Miami, Puerto Rico, Virginia, Maryland, and the amount of travel and being away from their families is
So
difficult.
have any Muni employees left that were
Not that I'm aware
pertinent to
of.
this project?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it's the contractors.
It's the
who have been
contractors that we're
leaving.
referring to, but
Okay.
those are the group that are leading the blueprinting efforts with the new staff, and we think we're fully staffed, and we've got we have all these modules that we're trying to build up, and they all have work, and we get somebody, and then before you know it, they're gone, and you have to look for them and start all over again, and it's real tough, and it's hard on the muni staff as well because they're constantly dealing with change and new people and their knowledge base and what they they have to educate the consultants on what we're trying to accomplish to begin with, and it's really difficult to be able to do that. Are you familiar with Paul Cotton? He's been the head of Philo. You might have seen him, and him and Umberto were here a couple of times.
I know who Alberto is and Paul.
Well, Paul was the Philo comparison to him, and Umberto
I think
left.
I know.
Well,
So
Paul's,
Alberto's still here?
No, Umberto left on November 5th, and Paul's last day is tomorrow.
Okay,
So they were our leads over the 2 areas, and so when we've lost them, we're losing a lot.
And they left because of miscommunications concerning travel?
Well, Umberto left because of personal family and the time commitments, and he was told he wanted to choose one or the other.
Gotcha.
So he did that. Paul is kind of similar with that, but also some concerns that I had with regards to the amount of work that needed to be done and the leadership to be able to accomplish that. So I made a decision that we needed to move on. So That eliminates all the Oxford people that we had. We had 3, they were all leads and through a period of attrition here, before the pause, after the pause, and right now, those are all gone, and we've replaced them either with mainly SAP people going forward. But we continue to struggle. We've got 1 or 2 open ones that we're trying to fill. We lost a payroll and a time one last week, and those are 2 critical ones that go just with the discussion here. So, I mean, we're doing the best we can, but it's hard to keep.
What are they? What happened? What was there?
Those were the Miami ones, and family and time commitments as well. And you know, they don't mind coming up here for a week, but they expect them several weeks to be gone. And the current travel policy I wrote is 2 and 1. So, be on site 2 weeks, off site 1 week. But we allowed them to go back, you know, on a weekend, every weekend, but if you live on the East Coast, most of them are choosing not to go back because you get there and you turn around and come back again. And there's a lot of business out there in the country with SAP, and consultants can kind of choose what they want to do, where they want to do, and Anchorage, Alaska in December is, with the 2 and 1 is complicated. So I think we've got some very good consultants. They are struggling with some of the specific areas where they're hard to fill, but we're hoping that we can continue to meet our deadline.
Based on what's happening in terms of consultants, and the fact that you need to replace these consultants, you still sticking to the July 27th?
At this point, we're still sticking to February 29th to be done with blueprinting.
Right, and then live on July.
July is dependent upon us hitting realization beginning March 1st. So
okay.
The July date's kind of the after the fact if we can't make it, make it flow all the way through.
But February is blueprinting.
End of February blueprinting, start of realization March 1st, which would give us, it's 59 weeks from when we start realization to go live, assuming no problems anywhere throughout that entire process. That's the amount of work. You go and configure the system, then you have a big testing time period, and then you have your training and your go live period.
Just for clarity, okay, so the end of February is the goal to be done with blueprinting?
That's correct.
Okay, and you still think you're going to meet that goal without, enough folks on board?
And yes.
Okay,
but
great.
It's going to be a challenge.
I'm a pretty positive person too, but Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you're thinking that after the holidays are over that we're going to be able to get consultants that are going to want to start work through the rest of the winter,
well,
as long as we don't hire people?
Right now we've got 3. Right now we have 3 core areas. We lost 3 payroll and time. We need people. We just lost them this last week. We need those people filled, so they're interviewing right now, and the hope is they'll be here January 4th. We have another finance position that we've had some difficulty with, and that position I believe has been filled with a person, and their start date will be January 4th as well. The rest of the consultants, they're going to be off-site for the next 2 weeks during the holiday. We gave them a 3 and 2 for December. Be here 3 weeks, and then the 2 because of the holidays, but then 2 and 1 thereafter. As long as we don't lose any of that core group, which is like 25 people, I've been told by the leads that we can get those other 3 positions started on January 4th. We believe we can make blueprinting, but it's going to be tight. We have a tremendous amount of work. The bigger problem that I'm worried about is the need for Muni resources during that time frame from the finance side to be able to, because they're year end and you've got W-2s and you're closing.
You got the audit too.
Yeah, and if there's getting their time committed to this, hopefully their directors and their leadership is going to insist upon how important it is to get the time allocated to the blueprinting to be able to meet the deadline. I have great confidence the consultants will have the documents ready. I have less confidence that they'll be able to route them through all the different review and approval processes given everything else that's going on.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Mr. Peterson. So I'm really glad to hear, considering the fact that these 3 people just left, that you're already interviewing. So great.
There's
now
but getting quality people and getting them up here is a challenge.
Okay.
So we have that, and then the last thing I guess I want to just kind of give an update on is not this Monday, but the Monday before, SAP gave the executive team their concept proposal, I guess, based upon what I asked them to prepare on what it would take to go from realization to go live. Just kind of the entire laundry list of all the different requirements, and then a rough idea of cost and a rough idea of time frame. That's where the 59 weeks keeps coming from. We asked the SAP representative to walk through with the executive committee on the Monday this week, that document, and also show how all the information was created to begin with. You know, how did they figure out this is what they thought it would cost, how much time, what did they use for their assumptions, all of those kind of things. So the rep walked through that particular document with them, questions were asked. And we're in a situation right now where we are trying to go back and fine tune that and evaluate it based upon comments, based upon information that we've learned, so that when we come back then around the 4th of January as well, we'll have, without reducing the scope at this point in time, we'll have a better cost estimate, so we can start looking at what our opportunities might be for what we can accomplish and so forth. But the goal is to try to spend January to see if we can reach an agreement on scope and cost with SAP. I mean, that was our priority. If you remember, that was the recommendation of the external committee. Try there first, see if you can get agreement on them, because that they're going to be hopefully reduce risk and have a better chance of going live, and we're going to work on that. I'm sure once that gets worked through, I mean, then there's work sessions with the assembly, and we have to go through the assembly process to be able to get that out.
So I have a question. Okay, so SAP gave you a concept proposal. Okay, did that in that concept proposal, the time frame was 59 weeks go live from completion of the blueprint.
That's correct.
Okay, so in that concept proposal, did they give you any costs?
They did.
Okay, and you're not comfortable to talk about it right now?
I am not.
Okay, that's fine. I get it.
Because there's two reasons for that. One, we haven't negotiated with them, and I think that's important. But two, the cost is really based upon scope.
Right.
And I would hate to give a number out there that is a number that is way more work than what we're going to ask them to do. And I think we have to figure out what the scope is that we're going to ask for, or what we're going to try to accomplish. And then once we have that, then I think we'll start negotiating with SAP.
Okay, that's what I was about to say. So in other words, you have their proposal, time frame, scope, and cost, and then in early January, negotiations begin.
Once we determine what we want the scope to be. The way I asked this is when we were during the pause, I said, we're going to need to know what realization and go live is going to be. So let's start now. And I said, what I want to do is I want them to focus on what it would take with the minimum amount of risk to project failure and with the fastest timeline. And just put everything out there so that we at least have a starting point to be able to look at. Then the administration can go and say, all right, we want these 5 things or these 7 or whatever it is, and then they can pull those out. But I asked them to put something together on everything, and then that way we didn't have to go back right now and say, oh, you forgot to put something in here, and then they have to spend the time to be able to do that. So that's what they did. So it's not really, it's more of a concept. It's more what I asked them to do to include every possible thing for success to minimize the project risk if SAP were to do it all.
Right.
And that's what they presented.
So part of the negotiation is going to be looking at what they presented and determining what we need, and then negotiating a cost.
Pull that for what we don't need out.
Right.
What's left is there, and then negotiate a final price with SAP to do it all. And if we can do that, then there would be no need to put it out for RFP.
Right, and I'm hopeful. I'm sure everybody else is too, in terms of the assembly. But no, that sounds really good, and we don't want to know or really need to know what their cost was in this proposal, but we'll find out soon enough. And I wish you, well on your negotiation. I'm sure you'll do a fine job. Did you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, just
That's all-
continue.
that's
That's
all
it.
right. That's
Okay,
what-
great.
that's what I
So
had.
you don't have any?
No, I was wondering if Zig had any questions.
I was gonna refer him after I referred to you first.
So,
That's okay.
it's still- I mean, it's still your thought.
That's okay. All right, did you have any comments?
No, not this time, but
Okay.
a lot of the things that our Alden has discussed are going to be included in my commentary tomorrow. certainly the whole issue of resources and staffing and